Lovely.
Yeah, so I'm looking at you. Ooh, brutal.
Grant, thank you so much for your time. Good to see you today.
No worries.
What are the messages that have come through to you from big business today in this survey?
Look, I think business, like everybody else in New Zealand society, has been through a really tough time. And I think what you're seeing there is a real desire in our business community to be able to get back onto a growth path. And I very much share that view. We can't pretend what happened with COVID didn't happen, and so therefore, levels of government spending, levels of government debt did have to match that, but we are on a path to a more sustainable fiscal position. That's one of the things I think businesses were asking for, but also they're asking for a bit of vision about what happens next, and I think that's what I tried to talk about today.
Do you agree with that?
About the vision? Yeah, look, I think this is the nature of the fact when you're dealing with a crisis, you just have to deal with it, and it's not always possible to get the big ideas you want up and over the line. But we've come through with an economic plan in this election campaign that is about lifting the value of what we do. Like you would have heard me say in there, be the best little trading nation in the world, be the most sustainable agricultural producer in the world. There are things we can do to lift the value of what the country does. It's a partnership between government and business, and now is the time for us to do that.
Some of the vibe coming through from big business is a little bit of anger, frustration, particularly around cohesion and collaboration. What is your party proposing to bring that up?
As I think I said on the stage, I think every New Zealander has got a sense of frustration and tiredness after the last few years, and I do understand that. Cohesion comes from us actually giving everybody an opportunity and a shot. It doesn't come from excluding people. It doesn't come from dividing us up. It actually comes from saying there are people in our society who need more support, and we should give that to them so that they can then fulfil their potential. So I actually agree that sense of cohesion and inclusion is a really important part of what makes the economy tick. And so I believe we've got the policies to do that. I actually see on the right side of politics some policies that would be set to divide us more, maybe not so much from national, but certainly from the people that they want to work with. And so I think that's an important consideration if you're a business or if you're a voter more generally.
You've dropped in the rankings. Why do you think that is?
It's been a hard time, hasn't it? I mean, let's just be frank about it. I've been the finance minister during a period where we've had lockdowns, we've had a global inflation spike.
You think it's those things, not your performance specifically?
Look, I think the general feedback I get from the business community is that they respect what I'm doing, but it's been a challenging time. Do they agree with every decision I make? No, and I wouldn't expect them to. But this is, around the world, I meet up with my finance minister counterparts on a reasonably regular basis. All of us are in a position where it's been tough, but you battle through the tough times and there are good times ahead.
You've spoken a lot today about the support that you actually brought to business through wage subsidies, small business loans, things like that to buffer them throughout the pandemic. Is it now frustrating that you've dropped in the rankings and they're judging your performance poorly when you gave them all of that support?
It's a little bit like the All Blacks, isn't it? It's your next game that everyone's worried about rather than your last one. I think we built up a really good relationship with business during that period. We co-designed many of the elements of the response to COVID. But yeah, now there's an expectation, well, what's next? And I accept that's life. I believe what is next for us is building on what we did, those free trade agreements that we've signed, the way we've done industry development and transformation in our digital sector, in our tourism sector. So we're alongside business. I'm not going to get particularly worried about specific ratings or anything like that. It's about how we make that partnership work into the future.
There's been suggestions that you have an addiction to spending or a spending problem. Do you agree with that sentiment? I
think my addiction problem is probably pastry rather than spending. No, I don't agree with that. We've had to deal with the cards that have fallen in front of us. When a cyclone or a massive flood comes along, the government does have to step up and spend a bit more. That last budget I did, 79% of the new spending was just cost pressures. I was like any business person in that room there. I was dealing with the additional costs that were in front of me, be they salaries for teachers and nurses or any other part of government spending. So no, I think we've done what we needed to do. Government spending as a percentage of GDP does start to come down over the next few years, and that actually isn't going to be easy. We've already identified some savings, and we're going to have to keep doing that work. So we're not immune from needing to find those savings, just as businesses have to as well.
The Reserve Bank Governor has admitted to me personally in my show that they have overstimulated the economy by not moving on rates sooner, not lifting them sooner. Do you admit that you may have overstimulated the economy with the benefit of hindsight?
As I say, you don't get to govern in hindsight.
But now, speaking of hindsight?
Yeah, look, if I have, every other country in the world did it as well. And I think, there was a need to do what we did. And there's actually been an ongoing need to support people to take the edges off cost of living pressures. And that's why you'll hear me use that word balance so often, is because you do have to get that balance right. If we knew exactly what we know now in 2020, maybe we wouldn't have put quite so much stimulus in, but you just don't get to govern that way.
A call today for the Reserve Bank of New Zealand to go back to its single mandate of solely keeping a lid on inflation. Will you bring that in if elected?
No, we won't. We made that change, and we made that change because we believe, just like the Federal Reserve in the US, just like in Australia and to some extent in the UK, our Reserve Bank is capable of focusing on inflation. That is their job, to bring that back down to 1 to 3%. But we gave them an additional job to support maximum sustainable employment. We did that because that is as good a proxy as you'll get for the health of the wider economy. They don't have the direct influence like they do with the OCR, but it is an important consideration. I think if those other countries can do it, our Reserve Bank can too.
I've heard from some business leaders today that if you took over from Jacinda Ardern and were the current and existing Prime Minister, that Labour would win this election. Did you want to be Prime Minister, or is that something you turned down?
No, I didn't want to do it. I was very public about that at the time. I feel like my role as Finance Minister is important. It's one that I enjoy doing and I want to keep doing. And I had absolute confidence in Chris Hipkins to take the role, and I still do.
And just one last question about mindset. Apparently we've lost our mojo. Do you agree with that? And if we have, how do we get it back?
Absolutely not. I don't agree with that at all. And one of the great things about an election campaign is you spend all this time going around the country meeting these amazing people full of mojo, full of great ideas for businesses or for their communities. What we've had is a period of time that's exhausted every single one of us, that's made us more stressed and anxious. Let's accept that, but say we're an incredibly resilient economy with so much opportunity. So no, absolutely not. There's plenty of mojo out there.
Minister of Mojo, thank you so much for your time.
Cheers, thanks.
Nicola, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for doing this.
Great to be here.
How did you enjoy the breakfast? Was it good?
Yeah, it was really good. I think there's a real debate to be had about the New Zealand economy, where it's going and what sort of management's needed for the future. And it's good to have that in a room with the leaders who are going to be contributing to our economic recovery.
What messages are you hearing loud and clear from big business?
Look, big business is worried about the trajectory of government spending, that it's not driving good enough results. They are worried that the economy still has very high inflation and interest rates. They want to see debt being paid down. They want a better regulatory environment and a government that's more responsive to the concerns of business, because they're conscious that unless they're investing in creating jobs, we've got very troubled years ahead of us as an economy.
If elected, what are you going to do about it?
We are going to restore discipline to government spending, drive better results for the money that we spend on behalf of taxpayers. We're going to lower tax rates for working people. We're going to create a better regulatory environment by cutting some of the red tape that's there and being very careful about future regulation. We're going to build nation-building infrastructure and work with the private sector to do that, lift education and skills, and ensure we take an outward global focus to trade and investment.
Quite a lot of anger and frustration out there from big business leaders at the moment. Do you think that National is fostering and worsening that mindset?
No, I don't see it that way at all. I think that as a country we are facing some pretty big challenges. You've seen violent crime increase, retail crime. That is alarming for people because in their own communities they can see fragility. I think there's also a sense that despite a lot of spending, we haven't seen those social indicators improve. People are still waiting a long time for surgery at the hospital. We've seen declining achievement in our schools, quite high truancy. And so I think that what we're seeing is a sense that why is it this hard in New Zealand? And our message at this election is it can be better, it will be better, but we're going to have to do things differently.
You've risen pretty significantly in the ranks. You must be pleased with that today.
Oh, look, I'm pleased that I have the confidence of our business community because, as I say, they are integral to New Zealand's recovery. I want an economy where people have good, well-paying jobs, where we are exporting value to the world, where we have the money to pay for really good public services. And all of that rests on having businesses who are confident and happy to grow. So them having confidence in me is an important part of the formula.
Do you think that your rise in the ranks, though, is more a broader desire for change in government among business, or purely down to your performance as finance spokesperson?
Oh, look, I think it reflects the fact that people know that it's time for a national-led government. People want to see a change in direction. There's real concern about Labour's failure across a number of fronts. Its failure to deliver infrastructure, to provide value for government spending, to ensure a good regulatory environment. So people are looking to National to be the turnaround agents, and I'm merely carrying that flag.
Do you worry that there may be an erosion in confidence in both you and your party, given that you haven't actually released your costings as we speak right now?
No, I'm confident when people see our fiscal plan in a couple of hours, they'll see that we've charted a responsible, careful path, both paying down debt faster than the current government is, ensuring that we have more disciplined spending, lower tax, and that we've done that in a way that provides really good buffers so that we can fund the frontline services people expect.
If you were going to release it anyway, why not just release it 2 weeks ago when you actually announced the policy and you wouldn't have been asked this many times to release it?
Oh, well, we have released the full costings of our tax plan, which is a separate matter. What we then wanted to do was properly study the update to the pre-election books that the government published, and they're an extraordinary set of books. There is real issues in there in terms of the blowout in debt, in terms of funding cliffs that have been left across many votes, in terms of outstanding liabilities and future fiscal risks. So we've been studying that carefully to put together a plan that we can stand by.
You say that, but ratings agencies say that our economy and our fiscal position is pretty good. Do you disagree with them?
Oh, look, I think it would be a massive concern if the international ratings agencies said, actually, this economy's in real trouble and we're downgrading it. So really what we've got is a status quo position. But what matters is the years ahead. And what those ratings agencies are inconsistent in saying is we do need to see fiscal consolidation. We do need to see the government controlling its own spending. And on past behaviour, the Labour administration simply isn't up to that task.
Some economists are suggesting that there could be further rate hikes needed if the economy doesn't improve into next year as well. Could National, if elected, actually do anything to stop rates increasing and hurting households further?
Well, look, what we have seen is that the current government has allowed inflation to stick around at higher levels than perhaps would have been necessary. During 2022, which was the peak of our inflation crisis, the government put the hugest amount of government stimulus into a budget that it's ever done, and that was clearly not the right approach. So we are where we are now. We've got a task ahead of us to ensure we do our bit to take pressure off inflation and therefore off interest rates, and we want to be a government that lets the Reserve Bank do its job, and we'll do ours.
When you say do its job, you think it should go back to a single mandate of only focusing on inflation?
Yes, that's right. We think it's really important to build confidence in the Reserve Bank's focus being inflation busting. If we don't get inflation out of this economy, then all our other goals are at risk.
Business leaders say we've lost our mojo. How do we get it back?
I think we get it back with the change of government. I think one of the best things we can do to boost confidence in this country and its prospects is change to a government and a party that has a track record of managing the books well and driving value out of government, that has a track record of working well alongside business, of working with the private sector to deliver, of having high education standards, of having a tougher approach on law and order. Those are the pivotal issues in this election, and we're asking for a mandate so that we can lead that change.
What about working well with coalition partners? Would you work with ACT and New Zealand First?
Well, look, what we've said is our strong preference is for a coalition government with ACT. If we have to, if the only way to form a government is to pick up the phone to Mr Peters, then that is what Christopher Luxon is prepared to do. But I'd point out, there's still 2 weeks until the election, and we will be working extremely hard to earn every vote so that we can have a simple coalition with ACT, and it's up to us to grow our support so that's possible.
Thanks so much for your time, Nicola. Nice to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. To stay up to date with all the latest news from the New Zealand Herald, click the subscribe button below or check out one of the videos here, and head over to nzherald.co.nz for more details on these stories and more.